This is the magicwordpodcast.com.
Hello, this is Scott Wells for the magicwordpodcast.com. This week, again, we are going to be broadcasting to you from the lovely entertainment capital of the world, Las Vegas, Nevada. We have several people we have already had as guests for here from in Vegas, and we have some more that are coming up over the ensuing weeks before we head to Atlanta for the IBM convention. A lot of stuff that's been going on, and I wanted to share with you, and one in particular that I wanted to give to you straight away, and it's because of a very special situation that has just happened. Specifically, we are going to enjoy an episode here this week with Jen Kramer. Jen works at the Westgate Hotel in Casino in Las Vegas, which is on Paradise Street, just right off of Las Vegas Boulevard, the Strip. And she has been there since 2018, but actually, of course, due to the pandemic, she was, like many others, were unable to perform for quite a while, but struggled along through that and successfully has not only put the show back together, but has just recently celebrated their 500th anniversary show. And when you stop and think, it's not like she's doing a dozen shows a night over 6 or 7 nights a week. She just does a couple of shows, or sometimes, I guess, one show a night, 3 nights a week. Plus, you had the pandemic in between and in there. So she was just celebrating her 500th anniversary show of that, which was on June the 24th. And so congratulations, Jen. That's just wonderful. I had a chance to see your show about a week or so ago, and just loved it. And then thanks for the invitation back for the special reception that we did for the 500th celebration. And not only that, you got a chance to visit with your mother and father, Wendy and Larry. Great meeting them as well, who are also listeners. It was kind of funny, not just supporters of yours, but also someone or some ones. There are people who have enjoyed listening to the podcast, as well as your Uncle Steve. So he also is a listener and a magician. So it was kind of interesting of having the whole family who is interested in listening to the podcast. And just you too, Jen, saying that you enjoyed listening to the podcast over the years. So when we met, it was interesting and fun and funny when you were saying, oh, I can finally put the face to the voice I've been hearing in my head for all these years. So thank you very much for that recognition. And also thank you and congratulations for your 500 shows. And so this week, for all of you listeners, you get the benefits of getting to learn a lot more about this happy-go-lucky and sophisticated sorceress. I would say she is just an amazing performer that you will enjoy start to finish the whole show. She just has a smile for everybody all the time. And she is the only female show, all-female show, I say one woman or one person show that is a female magician performing in Vegas currently, as of this podcast, which is being broadcast on June the 30th, 2022. Well, I am going to step out of the way and not tell you too much about what she's going to be talking about, other than you will learn a lot more about Jen and her progress from where she started in her humble roots and learning magic since she was 10 years old in Long Island and getting all the way to Las Vegas and traveling that royal road of magic all the way here. So please welcome my guest this week. I'm excited to present Jen Kramer here on The Magic Word. I am excited today to be with someone here in Las Vegas who is just celebrating their 500. That's 500 performances here in Las Vegas, and that's over at the Westgate Hotel. Please welcome my guest, Ms. Jen Kramer. Hey there, Jen. How are you?
Hi, Scott. I am doing well. Thank you for having me on The Magic Word.
Thank you for coming. I appreciate you being here after so long. You've been on the Strip for a long time now. You're just working like on Friday, Saturday, Sundays, just 3 nights a week. Isn't that right, pretty much?
That's right. That's what we're currently doing. The 5:30 Friday and then the 3 o'clock matinee on Saturday, Sunday.
And so when you stop and think about doing 500 of those. I mean, how many years does that come to? What's that, like 3 years or something?
Approximately. So we first opened the show May 16th of 2018. Then, of course, due to the pandemic, we were on pause along with all the other shows for a little over a year. But then we came back in May of 2021, and it's been so great to be back. I'm sure many of the Magic Word listeners are, of course, magicians as well. So during that time, it's like you really realize how much you miss being with a live audience, connecting with people in person, for sure.
During that time, did you do much or any Zoom meetings or any kinds of those things?
I did some of that. A lot of the time was really spent adapting the live show as well, thinking about how we can reimagine the blocking and the magic, the choreography, so that when we were to reopen the show in May 21, we'd be able to come back with a show that would work well in our new normal. Because, of course, all the rules and regulations were changing almost daily, and we had to make sure that the audience, of course, was safe and comfortable, and that, for example, pieces of magic where someone might have, in the pre-pandemic version of the show, come up on stage and perhaps picked a physical card, touched a bunch of objects, been standing next to me on stage. We had to work out a way to do magic where people felt that they were still engaged, still a part of the show, that it was still magic, an experience that we were creating together, but allow them to participate from their seats as opposed to on stage, and allow them to, participate by, for example, choosing something by saying it out loud as opposed to picking a card.
So that makes sense, of course, when you're developing things for online or Zoom types of shows. Those are audience members that are not physically there. You're going to have to interact with them the same way on stage during pandemic.
Right, exactly. And some of the things that we ended up coming up with for the show, originally for pandemic-related reasons, are elements of the show that now I'm so happy that we have in the show. So I think it really pushed me outside my comfort
something
zone.
That you keep in
That's
the show
right.
now?
Absolutely.
Awesome.
And so now, even if we can go back to exactly as we did the show before the pandemic, there are certain pieces in the show where I'm like, this is something that I might not have thought to do had it not been for this circumstance.
So it stretched your creativity.
It did. Absolutely. Yeah. It was a creative challenge for sure.
Yeah.
But I think it ended up yielding some pieces of magic that I'm really excited about.
Now, you were saying then, Jen, they went through a lot of changes. I'm certain there were certain state regulations as well, city regulations. I remember when Vegas had closed down and it was just a ghost town. And it was kind of interesting, I thought, too, that many of the hotels didn't have doors even. And so they had to put plywood up because they were open 24/7.
Right. That's right.
And so there are things that they had to do. Well, once that you kind of came back in, I know there was 6 foot spacing, and of course couldn't get on stage and have that. But that would obviously, because you got about 120 people seats in the Westgate. How big is the theater?
The current seating configuration, it's about 230.
230,
including the balcony.
Oh, I didn't even see the balcony. That's right.
Yes, that's right. And when we came back after the time on pause, it's true. There were all kinds of regulations as far as social distancing, and there was even talk at a certain point of would there be plexiglass. We didn't know at the time when the show was on pause exactly what the situation would be when we returned as far as what the rules would be. So we came up with various different ways that we would be able to do certain routines. We'd have, a plan A, plan B, plan C, D, just to make sure that no matter what, we'd be prepared.
Now, when families came together, let's say there was a couple or maybe a family of 4 or something, during the pandemic, were they allowed to sit together or did they have to even be spaced apart?
So groups were allowed to be seated together. If you came with a group, you could sit with your group, yes. But there was, limited capacity at that point, which was, for all of the shows, you weren't allowed to fill up the theater to 100% capacity to keep people safe and to keep them distanced. And of course, we wanted to make sure that everybody, felt safe and comfortable. So we were very, very careful about all of that. And I'm just, so grateful to get to be back doing the show, connecting with people in person again.
As you transitioned from not having people on stage to having people on stage, as you brought people up, was there a period of time in which you had to put on a mask or something, or when they came up on stage, or that you couldn't interact and touch or hand them something?
So a lot of the pieces in the show, my show really is heavy on audience participation.
Very heavy on, and that's one of the things I love about it. Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much. And I love the audience participation element too, because it really means every single show that we do is a little bit different. I say this on stage. It's true, because every audience is different.
Of course.
And the audience really makes the show what it is. Again, I'm sure a lot of the Magic Word listeners can relate.
Yeah.
The audience, you feed off of that energy of the audience.
Sure.
So I wanted to figure out ways to keep that audience participation element, to make people feel that they were really able to contribute to the show, to make legitimate choices. So for example, if I were to go out into the audience, I would need to wear a mask. But a lot of the solutions that we ended up coming up with were solutions that allowed me to be, at least 12 feet or so away on stage.
Oh.
And I'd, for example, for the, the game show routine that we have in the show, where a signed bill ends up inside a selected tube of lipstick.
Yes.
For that routine, originally, pre-pandemic, we had an entirely different structure, an entirely different method. I mean, the whole routine was completely changed when we came back, and we ended up putting in those 3 game show doors that you saw in the show that are wheeled out, and they're these.
It really fills up the stage, makes it look like a big show. I mean, not just it is a big show, but I mean, it really. That can be a close-up trick. It could be a parlor trick, but the way you have this with those things wheeled out there, that fills the whole stage.
Thank you so much. Yeah. And that was something that we came up with during that dark period during the pandemic, when I wanted to come up with a method for something where the audience member from their seat could legitimately choose from game show door number 1, 2, or 3. Yeah. And whichever one they chose would end up being I guess I won't give away too much, but the something special will end up happening. So that was something where we devised
they get lucky
the method.
Every show.
Right.
It just so happens.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. So that was something where we had to come up with something new from scratch. The thing that I had thought of, in my mind that I've been working on was something where there wasn't an exact solution out there that already had existed to accomplish that. So
then you go to a builder, I guess, like Bill Smith, or who builds for you?
That's right. So I've worked with various wonderful builders in town. I've worked with Bill. I've worked with Tim Clothier. For those doors, it was Sin City Scenic, Brian over there. So it's Tim Clothier built the elevator that you saw. He built the bell cart, which is something that we wanted to custom make to do the quick change behind with some garment bags. So Tim created that. He created the phone machine that's featured later in the show. So I'm definitely grateful to the fantastic builders in Las Vegas. One of the things I love about Vegas, there's so many talented people in the magic world to collaborate with, to work with.
They are right here. So you just kind of give them a call and say, this is what I got in mind. And it doesn't take long. They can come up with a method.
Exactly.
For that. Yeah. And it's probably hard also to try to keep on the cutting edge, because there are so many magicians and who are creative and trying to find something new and rare for their show that's unique. And after it, unfortunately, I think gets in some people's shows, they think, so other magicians might think, I think I'll do that. Well, they shouldn't be, because that was yours, and so that gets a whole different issue of piracy and and ethics and everything else. Right.
And if someone even were to take something that's magicians, of course, ethically, it's not the right thing to do. Right. And also, I think it wouldn't even play as well for that person, because it's not a routine that they created. Oftentimes, I think the game show doors are a good example. We were drawing on napkins and pieces of paper, trying to come up with the best way to do something, because it really filled a need that we had in the show, and it fit my personality and what I was going for. And so I think in many cases, of course, I so believe in always doing what's right and checking with a magician and making sure, of course, you never want to step on anybody's toes or do anything that belongs to anybody. And I'm always, really, really careful and thoughtful about that. But even if a magician were to, it's like, oh my gosh, first of all, it's ethically wrong. Yeah. And second of all, I just don't think it would play as well if it's not
yours
for them, if it's not created based on their personality, based on the needs in their particular show. If it's something they just try to plug in, I just don't think I think audiences are smart, and audiences can sense.
That's true.
They can sense when something does not quite fit authentic. Right. Exactly.
Well, going to the development actually of your show, you said obviously that you had been doing this well before COVID had set in. And how did this come about? I'm always curious about how people get to Vegas. What is your path of getting here?
So I guess to start at the very beginning of my journey in magic, I was 10 years old when my Uncle Steve, who, by the way, he doesn't travel too often, but he is coming here to Las Vegas this week for my 500th show. So I'm so thrilled that he'll be here. He's flying across the country all the way from Florida for it, which is so special for me. And it's amazing how sometimes those seemingly tiny moments in life can end up having such an outsized impact. And this 10th birthday gift from my Uncle Steve is the perfect example of that. He gifted me the Royal Road to Card Magic. I still have the exact copy that he gave me sitting on my bookshelf. Okay. It has an inscription that he wrote to me, saying, as you go down the royal road, it'll open up the world of card magic to you as it has for so many others. And that is my most treasured physical possession. I absolutely love that book because it is what first piqued my interest in magic.
Yeah.
And I remember...
And you were about how old? 10?
I was 10 years old. And I just became completely obsessed with it. I remember sitting on the floor of my childhood bedroom. I can remember this so clearly. And I would sit, I'd have the book open. I'd have my knee holding the book open so that my hands could be, gripping the cards in mechanics grip and learning all the different techniques and the shuffles and working through the magic. And by the way, one of the things I love about that book is I think it's structured, it has so many important fundamentals of card magic, of course, but I also think it's structured in a really inherently motivating way because you learn a technique and then you immediately learn a piece of magic that implements that technique.
Right.
So you're not just learning these techniques out of context, you're learning something and then you immediately get to put it into practice.
It's practical.
And so I love that. And, of course, it's such a classic of magic.
That was one of the first books that was recommended to me also. That was one of my early books that I got into magic then as well. And so I think it's very important and that you learn, even if you don't continue on with card magic, even though that you have and you do, and you do have some card magic in your show, it proves your chops, your talent, your abilities, certainly. It's kind of like, these are hidden talents, but here are other things that I can do. So it's not all cards. I went to see Farrell Dillon's show, and he was doing some manipulation. He was doing some great card tricks and everything, but there were a lot of card tricks in that context, which is not a bad thing. I'm just saying everyone has their own act and their own show and however they want to put something together. But yours has a good variety of everything, and the card tricks are just a portion of the larger show of you, getting to know you.
Thank you so much. And of course the show evolves over time, and so we've put pieces in and taken pieces out and, wanted to really create the best show flow possible. Yeah. And for me, card magic is special to me because it is what first piqued my interest in magic, but there are also so many other styles of magic that I love.
The size of cards. I mean, like for a child's hands to begin with, did you use bridge-sized cards as a child?
I actually used poker
right away.
cards.
Did you?
I did. And I remember as a kid, my hands, of course, are 10-year-old hands. They were small hands. Yeah. But for whatever reason that was the bicycle cards, the ones that I had on hand, those are the ones that I practiced with. Although, now if there were a 10-year-old who were to come up to me, I'd say, feel free to use bridge cards. Use whatever feels most comfortable to you.
Correct.
Absolutely. If someone were to ask me.
I've always said not to start with bridge cards because if you do, you'll start to become comfortable with that. And then when you go to the larger poker size, it's going to be harder. It'd be easier to go down than it is to go up. In size.
That's a good point too.
But as far as getting into it, a lot of times youth will start doing magic as children because they want to be popular or prove themselves or something. Did you kind of feel that? Did you consider yourself a nerd when you were a kid, or this was something that made you popular, or why did you start getting into magic as opposed to, I don't know, soccer or whatever?
Well, first I just loved it. I just thought it was so intriguing and so interesting. Okay. And I think my reasons for being a magician have changed over time for sure. Yeah. I think at the very beginning, it's that curiosity, that feeling as a 10-year-old that, oh my gosh, I get to learn these magical secrets that even the all-knowing grown-ups don't know.
Oh, yeah.
I can show them something that will make them say, wow, sure. And the grown-ups seemingly know everything. Your parents know all, and all the grown-ups in your world are.
I see.
And so I think there's something very exciting about being able to show them something that is special to them and kind of having that feeling as a 10, 11-year-old. But over time, the reasons definitely changed. I think, now for me, it's about connecting with people at the end of the day. Yeah. It's really about that genuine human connection. And I think that's why I love the audience participation element of the show so much. It's why I love the meet and greet after the show where I get to connect with people, chat with them up close and really have great conversations with them, because that's what it's all about. Connecting with people, showing them something special, something out of their day to day. I think magic allows you to really do that, to show them the impossible is possible.
And you spend a lot of time with each individual person rather than just saying, hey, thanks very much and sign an autograph. I mean, when I was there probably were 20 people in line and it took a half hour before I got to you because you're spending, it's like, oh, it's your birthday. Really? Where were you born? When? Oh, I did. And you moved. Did you ever move? And what about your brothers? Are they your birthday? I mean, you just kind of, you really genuinely care about the audience and you spend a lot of time because I guess you're figuring they're spending time with you and they want a piece of you and they get to know you. They were getting to know you better in line at the back of the room sales than they are during the show, because you only have a finite amount of time then to begin with. But there after the show, you get to know them and they get to know you better then too.
Absolutely. And, I'm grateful that they decided to come check out the show, to spend their afternoon or evening with us. And I really want to give them a special experience. I remember when I was a teenager, I was in high school at the time, and I came to Las Vegas on a trip with my family. We went to see Penn and Teller, who, I've admired Penn and Teller ever since I was a kid. I love Penn and Teller. They're fantastic. And I remember that they did that after the show, and it had a real impact on me. The fact that they would stay until every last person, who wanted to chat with them, got time with them. And I thought, you know what, that's so special. And, for me I must have been 15, 16 years old, that really made an impact on me. And I remember thinking at that moment, you know what? I would love to have a Vegas residency one day. It had been my longtime dream. And I thought if I ever have that opportunity, hopefully when I have that opportunity, I would that's something that's really important to me, is getting to connect with people, and get to know them. And I genuinely really enjoy getting to know them. I enjoy chatting with them.
One of your favorite parts is after the show rather than during the show, it sounds like almost.
It's true. I mean, I love, of course, doing the show as well, but there is something special just about getting to meet people, to learn about them. There will be, kids who come up after the show. And by the way, we'll have like 2, 3, 4 generations come to the show together, which to me is so special. People will come with their grandparents, their great-grandparents. Definitely. And when a kid will come up after the show and say, oh, this is so cool. Now I want to be a magician, or I'm so excited about magic, or they'll come up and give me a big hug, or they'll say, oh, can I show you a magic trick? Or they'll say, oh, I just got a magic kit and I'm so excited about it. Like, those conversations I love, because it reminds me so much of myself at that age, and it makes me, it just gives me so much confidence. The future of magic is in great hands.
In good hands. Yes. Going back again to when you were a teenager, and did you feel that boys were intimidated by some of the skills you had because you knew something that they didn't do or couldn't figure out?
When I was about 11, 12 years old, I joined the Society of Young Magicians, which, the youth group of the S.A.M.
And you lived where at the time?
And I lived in New York.
Okay.
So I grew up on Long Island.
Long Island, okay.
And it was,
that's right. You went to Yale. I forgot. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. And I remember, at the time I was too young to go into the city by myself. So my dad would take me to the magic meetings, and, it was such a special experience. I remember at the time, and some of the magicians in that group are still great friends to this day. And when I joined the group, it was 15 to 20 boys sitting around a table and me. And I remember thinking, oh, it would be so cool if there were more girls in the group. And now, fast forward, there are several young girls in the group. So I think that's an indication of the direction the magic world is heading in for sure, which I think is wonderful and so exciting. Yeah. Absolutely. But to go back to your question, I think it really could be something that could be intimidating for a young girl who might show up at a magic meeting, and there might be a table of just boys, and she doesn't necessarily feel that she belongs there. I think in my case, I was really fortunate to have a group of really supportive, awesome people. The mentor in our group was a man named Albert Lasher, who was so wonderful. He would teach us so much. He'd create opportunities for us to perform. We would volunteer at Mount Sinai Hospital's Kids Zone TV, which is a closed circuit TV studio where we'd be able to perform and have, the pediatric patients calling in from their rooms, and we get to host shows and do magic. Definitely. And it was, Albert really, he was so generous and so kind and so giving. And from Albert to the other kids in the group, I personally was really fortunate, I think, to be surrounded by great people. And once we all got to know each other, it just felt like I was one of the group. Right.
I would think that every child, boy or girl, are a little bit intimidated when they're among another group of supposed peers because they don't know the level or skill level. But it sounds to me like if you started at 10 and reading the Royal Road to Card Magic, I mean, you had some skills that you brought in. So it wasn't like just now learning and, here's a 3-card Monty or a color Monty or something, that's rather pedestrian. I mean, you're doing double lifts and false cuts and everything. So you're kind of already in, and they're going to say, wow, she's great. I mean, she's one of us, probably right away.
I really cared about it. I really loved it. And I think it was also a comfortable environment. And again, I'm very fortunate for that because I know not everybody has had, of course there's good and bad in any industry. People, I just feel incredibly grateful to have had such great people in my world, particularly in those formative years in magic. And I think it was this comfortable environment where there was a spirit of we're all learning together. Mm-hmm. And, we'd get up at every meeting and each of us would perform a piece of magic and we'd share feedback. But it would be in a really supportive, caring way. It's like you knew that the group wanted you to succeed, wanted your magic to be absolutely. They had your back. They wanted your magic to be as strong as possible, just like you did, and you wanted their magic to be as strong as possible. So there was just this feeling of us all growing together because, of course, anybody, when you start in magic, you start at
zero.
Exactly. You start at zero. You start not knowing anything, and then you just gradually over time, you develop your skills, you develop your performance chops, and I think that was something that we were able to do kind of as a group, and we'd get to watch each other grow and evolve and do that together.
And you see also different directions. I mean, all of us have gone through different phases in which that it might be, cards and then birds and then illusions or perhaps mentalism or as Eugene Berger had said, this is just a house with so many rooms and plenty of rooms for everybody to do any and everything. And so a lot of us have tried a little bit of everything. And so where did you go after cards? Did you start going big? I mean, you're doing illusions now. I mean, what was that transition or was that a slower transition?
Yes. So I guess this ties right into your question originally where we started about how did I end up in Las Vegas? And so I started at the beginning with the Royal Road to Card Magic and then ended up, so the two questions will sort of tie together here because I wanted to, like you were saying with the Eugene Berger quote, kind of explore those other rooms of magic and learn everything I could. I remember I went to Tannen's magic camp. And
I was about to ask you about that. What was your experience? Now, hold right there for a minute. I mean, there's thought on the rest of the stuff, but on the Tannen's magic camp, now that's a camp that you go and spend a week and they actually have cabins and everything, and then you really get to work with these kids. And then throughout the day, they have different mentors, I guess, who come in and they're teaching certain things. They're teaching you theory as well as tricks, I assume. Is that? I've never been to the camp, so I'm not familiar with it. And so for those who may not have attended, I just kind of want you to elaborate a little bit on what Tannen's camp is like.
Yes. So Tannen's magic camp, it's as you said, a week-long experience where you eat, breathe, sleep magic. And
with like about 60 other kids or so?
That's right. I don't remember the exact amount. I want to say maybe around 100 or so.
Mm-hmm. I was thinking there are a bunch.
Ish, yeah. And
it's just like 1 week a year. I mean, it's not like throughout the whole summer. Okay.
Yes, it was a 1 week experience, and it was just magic.
Yeah.
Which, of course, was such a dream because I loved magic, so this was great.
And everybody there did too.
It's true. And it was really, as you had your breakfast, your lunch, your dinner, you'd be magic jamming with everybody. There were
cool.
Competitions. I remember my first year I entered the junior close-up competition, which was very exciting. It was the first, real kind of magic competition experience I had. And that really taught me as well, just the value of working together, because I remember everybody was so kind. And this goes back again to being, grateful to have wonderful people, surrounding me in those years. But I remember that, my fellow campers and counselors would stay up late helping me work on my script. And that was the first time that I had really scripted something, was for that act. It was, I was 14. It was a track-themed act. So I dressed up as if I were about to run a track race.
Okay.
And I created a little
track
suit. Exactly. And I ended up winning first place, which is very exciting to do that. And that was really thanks to a team effort, because it was
that you developed at the camp during that time.
Right. So I had the magic I had done before, I did a Chicago
but you hadn't put it all together in a
But
routine.
I hadn't really refined the script. I had one version of the way I did it, but to kind of turn it into this whole track act, that was something that, my friends at Magic Camp and the counselors really helped me with. I'd show them my version of the script and they'd help me tweak it and change this and change that. So, that really, they were so giving and they were so kind, and that, had such an impact on me.
Who were some of the counselors? Do you remember back when you were there?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there were so many. One of them, like Corey Brager, she now leads the Society of Young Magicians group, Assembly number 69 in Manhattan, that Albert Lasher had led when I was a kid in the group.
Uh-huh.
So, yeah, there were wonderful role models. They would bring in magicians as well from all around the world to come and perform shows in the evening.
Wow.
And that was really exciting to get to see real working professionals, in magic.
Have they
doing
asked
what
you
they
to
did
come
best.
back and do something?
I would love to do something. I know the last couple of years it's been a more of a
Right.
virtual
Correct.
virtual experience, due to the pandemic. But it's a special place, and I think back on my Tannen's memories very fondly.
Wow. Okay, you learned a lot then at Tannen's, and then continuing on from there, what?
Yes. So I worked at Phantasma Magic during the summer in high school
with
as a
Roger
magic
Dreyer.
demonstrator.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, with Roger. And
He told me
I was
about
working-
you. He was saying she was fantastic. I had done an episode with him some time back, and we were talking about some of the people who come through, and he said, Jen Kramer's here, and said that she used to be a demonstrator. She's in Vegas. You need to talk with her sometime. So I'm glad.
That
one
is
the
so
reasons I wanted to
kind
come
of
back.
him. That is so kind of him. Well, Roger's fantastic, and I'm again grateful to have had the opportunity to work at Phantasma, and he's been somebody who's been so kind and supportive over the
hasn't he?
years.
Over the youth, and to the youth in particular.
Absolutely.
Encouraging.
Absolutely. We used to have our Society of Young Magicians meetings.
Oh, did you? Okay.
In the special room at Phantasma at the Magic Shop.
Yeah.
We started actually in the basement of a restaurant called Maui Tacos.
Okay.
So we originally met in the basement of this restaurant, and then we ended up moving to this beautiful room at the Phantasma Magic Shop.
Yeah.
Which was a wonderful place to meet.
Did you ever do the Saturday lunches, by the way, like with Harry Lorraine and all those guys, Steve Cohen and
I wish I had. I think
Mary
because I
did
was
it.
a kid at the time.
Okay.
I
didn't know if
as
later
much, but
if you did.
no, because I guess after. Well, this sort of takes us further in the story, I
Okay.
suppose.
I'm jumping
this
around
is,
here.
No, this is perfect. It's moving us along. So I had the chance to connect with this awesome New York magic scene from as you mentioned, Roger to I was working with Magic Ballet. We were demonstrating together at the Magic Shop, and David Roth was working at the Magic Shop. A real legend in coin magic, and Magic, who's so talented and a great guy, and. So I loved magic, performed magic anywhere and everywhere I could. I remember my first gig was my little sister's birthday party when I was about 11, and I was paid in pizza and thrilled with the arrangement.
It was a win-win.
Yes, a win-win. Love some pizza. And then I performed at my cousin's Sweet 16, and ended up as I was 11, 12 years old doing birthday parties. Then I ended up doing a lot of the bar bat mitzvah circuit and performing after that.
Big
started
circuit out
doing,
there.
That's right. Yeah, which was a great way to get that flight time, as Lance Burton would say, and really build those performing chops. There's real, hours with people, performing in the real world, seeing all kinds of things that can happen in a live performing situation, both up close and on stage. And, I ended up doing corporate events and private events, and, did that all through middle school, high school.
What was that like for your transition, by the way, of going like from bar mitzvahs and everything and entertaining 11-year-old kids, and then one of the parents saying, hey, we're having a company party? Were you able to transition easily to do some adult types of things after working birthday parties and things? I mean, were you focused so much on that? How did you personally make that transition?
It's a great question. I remember learning at that age, probably right around, I'd say high school was the time when I started diversifying. I'd say in middle school, I was mostly doing probably my sister's friend's birthday parties when I was 11, 12 years old. But by the time I got to high school, I think, well, first of all, I guess this is a good place to start. When I was 14, during my lunch period, lunch break at school, I went out into the front yard of the school and I called the local community manager of the Barnes & Noble bookshop. Now, I've loved books ever since I was a kid.
Good.
And I remember being with my family in this Barnes & Noble and seeing the children's stage. The story time stage that's in the children's department at the bookstore?
Right.
And I saw that stage, and I was 14, and I remember thinking, I'd love to perform there. I'd love to do my show on that stage.
Sure.
So I cold called the local Barnes & Noble and said, hi, I'm Jen Kramer. I'm 14 years old. I'm a magician.
Yeah.
Would it be possible for me to come in and do my show? And the community manager said, well, you can come in and we'll try it out. And so I did kind of an audition show, a test show.
Yeah.
I volunteered to do it. I wanted just that flight time, that opportunity.
Right.
And I figured it would also be a great way to, both to get those performing chops and that experience, and also to meet people, to meet families who were having events and parties and birthday parties.
Right. You could pass out your card.
Exactly. Yes, that's right. So for me, that experience also taught me kind of the importance, going back to your question, of being adaptable, of having material that can work in different environments and knowing what works best for each kind of audience. And I think that's something that you learn over time with experience.
True.
You know, you have shows and you realize, oh, that went really well, or you have a show and you think, oh, you know what, that piece of material might not have been the best choice. The next time I do a show for this kind of audience, I'm going to choose to do something a little bit different. And I think it's those experiences that really kind of help you gradually over time learn.
Even now, after almost 500 performances, I'm confident that you still have something in which you're going to say, I should have placed this item over on this table instead of over here. So you're always tweaking and fine-tuning.
Absolutely. To me, the show is a continually evolving thing.
Yeah.
It's something where I'm proud of what we've created so far, but I always want to keep growing. I want to keep improving. I want to keep beating my own best.
We have an interesting art, being a performing art that it is. I had a conversation with Michael Goddard. We were talking about Goddard a little bit earlier, and the reason I wanted to talk with him was about just creativity and what is his muse and how you create. And one of the questions I was asking him is, whenever you are, he's a rock star in the art world, and he does so many paintings and pictures and sculptures. I said, when you're finished with something and you hang it in the gallery or it's in a museum or something, do you go back and look at that and say, ooh, I want to get my brush and just add one more stroke, or there's 2 or 3 things? And he said, yeah, I do. Because I would think in a way it's kind of like once you're done, you're moving on to the next project and the next project. But then if he goes back, and because of the speed that he's working, he might be still thinking, perhaps if I would have had more time, I think for the rest of us, it looks great. Performance-wise, I think it's the same with us. We are also always wanting to make the next show better by whatever little tweak or advantage you can put into the show.
Absolutely. And it's amazing sometimes how even the tiniest tweaks can end up having a serious impact on the audience's experience.
That's what Bob Fitch says all the time when he's training people also. It's just, I remember talking to Gene Anderson about that, in which he was saying, well, if I turned to the left instead of the right, and he said, that was worth like $10,000 to me to learn proper blocking in the show, because I just didn't need to walk that far. I need to do it here. It's like, that made perfect sense.
Yes.
It's just the little things that are worth so much more.
Absolutely.
Instead of taking 25 years to learn it.
Right. And sometimes it's like, you don't even know what you don't know. It's like the more you learn, the more you learn there is to learn.
Right. Do you have a director or someone who does do that for you? It kind of gives you some outside perspective.
So I've worked with various really wonderful, talented people over the years. Mark and Ginger, for example, have been super helpful to me, particularly as we were coming up with the kind of revamped, more COVID-friendly, as we were saying, version of the show. They were really, really helpful. But
they were living in Reno, I guess, at the time, or
that's right.
They came up, okay.
That's right. So they came out here for some time over the summer, and we got a chance to work together in the theater, rehearsing. We were adjusting lights, we were adjusting blocking, we were working on scripting. So they were super helpful, and I've gotten the chance to work with so many great people over the years. By the way,
for people who are listening, that's Mark Kalin and Ginger. So
yes, that's right. Yes, Mark Kalin and Ginger, who, by the way, their Carnival of Wonders show.
One of the best.
Oh my gosh. Unbelievable.
I'm with you on that.
Unbelievable.
One of the best shows I've ever seen.
Yeah, amazing.
Of course, Jeff Hobson is the ultimate.
Oh my gosh,
you had Mark and Ginger.
The 3 of them together.
Awesome.
Absolute magic.
Yeah. I'm surprised that's not still running someplace, but.
They're so talented. And the 3 of them just, they all complement each other so beautifully. They each really bring their own distinct personality and strengths to the show.
Exactly.
And it was, I thought, just really beautifully constructed. Wonderful show.
Of course, there was the Leroy, Talma, and Bosco so many years ago, back in late 1800s, early 1900s. And I obviously hadn't seen the show, but from what I have read about their show, it sounds kind of like that kind of a thing with the Carnival of Wonders, where Bosco was the funny guy and Jeff would be that guy, and then Leroy and Talma would be Mark and Ginger, who are equally talented in their own ways. And so anyhow, that show lasted for years, and I'm surprised that Carnival of Wonders didn't carry on.
It was a fantastic show. I mean, just thinking about how it came full circle with, I won't give away too much, I suppose, although I'm sure
it's over.
I think you're right. They wouldn't mind, but
when that whole thing went back in the hat.
When the whole thing went that's exactly what I was thinking, right into the suitcase. Oh my gosh. I mean, what a beautiful, first of all, visually stunning, and also just so beautiful and so full circle. It feels like the entire, from the beginning to the end, it felt like a cohesive experience. Yes. And so magical, and, all those kind of peaks and valleys, the roller coaster of the kind of emotional experience as an audience member.
Like a real carnival.
Beautiful show. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Yes. Yes.
So enough about their show. Getting back to you. Yeah.
I love it. Fantastic show.
Yeah, very good show.
Yes.
So they were instrumental in kind of helping with developing the show. But coming then from Vegas or to Vegas, you were talking about, so you were 14, you were doing then the shows there and started doing more corporate shows and were able to make that transition. So then you went to school, went to Yale, and I assume you continued to do magic at Yale. Did you work at a restaurant or something while you were there then too?
So when I first got to Yale, I remember thinking, okay, this place, it's practically like Hogwarts from Harry Potter. It's got the Gothic architecture. Right. You know, it felt like the kind of place where there would be a magic group already established. But at the time, there wasn't. So I started the Yale Magic Society. I founded that when I was a freshman. I served as president for the next 4 years, and the group is still going strong. And I'm so excited and proud of what they're doing today. And actually had some amazing experiences with both the Yale Magic Society and Magicians Without Borders, which is an organization really close to my heart. And we ended up traveling together. We did a trip after I graduated from college, did a trip to India. We went to Mumbai and we went to rural Gujarat performing. And I was so excited to connect these two groups that I love so much. Yeah. And, to be able to connect them and to, have this experience together and build that relationship, which is an ongoing relationship now between the two groups.
Great.
Has been a wonderful, wonderful experience. So the Yale Magic Society, we had an opportunity to help each other with our magic, to perform in the New Haven community and on campus. And having that community, I think, is so important.
I have a good friend, Ash Adams, who was a graduate of Yale also, and he was from Fort Worth, and his father and grandfather's family owned an architectural firm. And so he was going and studying architecture also. But I remember his dad saying, well, after spending the tuition for 4 years of him going to Yale and then coming back and being a magician, he didn't need to go to Yale. I mean, he's already a good magician. I mean, what? So it's like all that money. But he's an excellent magician. He's a collector of magic then also, and just
cool.
Brilliant. I don't know if you don't know Ash Adams by chance, do you? Does that name ring a bell?
I don't yet,
No?
but would love to meet him sometime.
Yeah, he's another Yalie.
Oh, very cool.
So that was before you were, because that's why I was wondering if there was a club beforehand that might have started and then died. I mean, similarly, like with the Texas A&M, there is a called the Bureau of Aggie Magicians, BAM, that has kind of come and gone. My buddy Ben Jackson formed that organization some years ago, and I remember going and lecturing. In a lecture hall, they probably had 60 people. I mean, they built up a pretty good magic club, but I don't think that's continued. I'm sure it's just like some societies kind of come and go, and depends upon the level of interest and how many people are interested in that. So you're saying yours is still going strong, though, at Yale.
It is.
That's great.
Which is exciting.
Do you go back occasionally, or to there?
I would love to. I do occasionally, but it's been a while now, especially with, of course, the events of the last couple of years.
Yeah, sure.
But it's, it was such a special experience also because I remember we would bring in magicians from Las Vegas, from all around the world. We had, Jeff McBride came and performed. We had Eugene Berger, you mentioned earlier. Yeah. We had, so many really talented magicians who we were able to connect with, which is such an awesome
How'd you get in touch with some of those guys to come out to Yale to do that? Were they friends of yours or other magicians, or the sponsor or the mentor?
Well, in the case of Eugene Berger, he had graduated from the Yale Divinity School.
Oh, I'd forgotten that.
Huh. Yeah, so he had been on campus, I believe, doing an event with the Divinity School, and was so kind to come and spend hours. I mean, I remember we were magic jamming in, I remember the exact room we were in where we held our meetings. It was in the lower level of the Pearson College. It was one of the residential colleges, one of the dorms. Yeah. And we had this meeting room, and I remember Eugene stayed with us for hours, and he was so kind and so generous with his time and his energy. And he was. And So that's how that came to be. And then some of the other magicians we reached out to, and we said, would you be interested in doing this? And again, it was such a fantastic experience to have them.
I mentioned restaurants. Have you ever worked restaurants or done close-up strolling at restaurants like that?
While I was in high school, I did a little bit at the local. Let's see, I was probably about 15 or 16. I did a little bit of performing at the local TGI Fridays. Yeah. When I was probably early high school, 9th or 10th grade.
But that wasn't for you.
For a little bit. I enjoyed it. Actually, it was a great opportunity to get, again, that flight time.
Right.
Definitely. But I think I ended up over time and kind of going chronologically as I went to college and then graduated from college and moved out to Vegas, I ended up finding kind of certain markets that I ended up really enjoying for, and ended up focusing more time and energy on those. So I did, a lot of corporate events. I did the college market for a while where I was traveling, performing at colleges, universities. And when I moved out to Vegas, and this kind of comes full circle with the original question about how do you come to Vegas? Yeah. Well, I knew at the time I was intrigued by Vegas. It was this, magic mecca of the world, this magic capital. There was so much happening in the world of magic in Las Vegas. Right. I had this long time dream to have a Las Vegas residency. So I had an inkling that Las Vegas was the place that I wanted to launch this full-time career in magic. But at the time, I hadn't really spent any serious time in Vegas. I had been here briefly, for a few days here or there. I, interned at the Magic Live convention when I was 16, which was a wonderful experience and learned so much. But I wanted to really get a better feel for what the Vegas showbiz world was all about. So I ended up doing an internship with Nathan Burton back when his show was at the Flamingo. Yeah. And so for 2 summers, after my freshman and sophomore years of college, I interned in Las Vegas and, really got a chance to learn so much and had a great experience working with
Were you a box
Nathan
jumper or were
team.
you just behind the scenes or what did you do as far as interning?
Whatever needed to be done.
Okay.
It was all about just
required
helping.
Painting the box, you do whatever.
Whatever had to happen, and that sometimes involved helping backstage. It sometimes involved emails and media requests. It sometimes involved special events. Whatever had to be done, I was game to, to help out however I could, to contribute however I could. And, to me, it was just this really exciting learning opportunity. And so, got a chance to connect with, again, Nathan, his he and his team were so great to work with, and his family.
His whole family. I know his family's involved intimately with all of the show, from ticket sales to everything,
Right. Yes. So I was working with his mom, Nancy, and his sister, Emily, and I really got a chance over those 2 summers to learn a lot more about what it was really like to live and work in Las Vegas.
Did you feel then also that to have a show, you needed to have a big show? You weren't going to be able just to do card tricks in a theater. You were going to have ramp it up and do some illusions?
Well, I think there are so many different ways to do magic in general and of course in Las Vegas. And I think that's one of the things I love also about Vegas is that there's so much diversity in terms of the types of magic shows that you can see.
Oh, goodness, yeah. And there are a lot more mentalism shows now than there were even back then, too.
That's right. So you can see mentalism shows, you can see grand illusions, you can see more close-up style, you can see parlor style, you can see magic that focuses more on comedy, you can see magic that's more serious. And so I think there are so many different ways to be a magician. I think that's something that's so exciting about our field, is that we get to really chart our own course. We get to decide what kind of magician do I want to be, what kind of show do I want to put on.
Right.
So when I was a junior and senior in college, I started thinking more seriously about these questions. Yeah. And that was when, I knew, okay, I'm going to graduate in 2014, and I did. And I knew at that point that Las Vegas was really the place that I wanted to be. Yeah. And, I had grown up in New York. Most of the people I knew, my friends, my contacts were on the East Coast at that time. And so, after interning in Las Vegas for a few summers, got to learn more about it. Right. And then during my junior and senior years, from my dorm room in New Haven, Connecticut, I started reaching out to people in Las Vegas, mostly cold calls, cold emails. And
you mean like to producers or to casinos or show?
To many of the properties. So I would reach out to particularly some of the smaller, slightly off the strip properties. Okay. And I would pitch my concept for a show. And I think something important that I should note here as well is that I didn't have the expectation that I would reach out and that everybody would say, oh, yes, come and do your show here.
That's right.
Because I think that would be a recipe for disappointment.
Yes.
But I think, just being proactive, going after what you want. Yeah. I think that, to me is one of the most important things you can do. And I think knowing that, okay, I only need one yes. It doesn't matter how many no's I get. If I get the one yes, it's a win.
That's true.
So, just putting yourself out there and, creating opportunities to get that yes. So as expected, I got a lot of no's. There were a lot of people who I reached out to and it wasn't anything to take personally. They didn't know me personally.
Of course.
I was cold calling them, cold emailing them.
Right.
They didn't know me or my act, but I would send my materials, my, promotional videos and photos and information. And I I would, try to see if I could sit in a room with them face to face, because I felt like that was my best shot at making something happen. Was, to establish that personal connection with them. So, as expected, got a lot of no's. A lot of the property said, well, we don't have the space, or we don't have the budget, or we've never done anything like this before.
Because you were not wanting to four-wall. You were wanting actually to have a job with the casino where they paid you, like I guess a two-wall maybe.
Because at the time as well, I was about to launch a full-time career as a magician. That was my goal. And I had always worked through school as a magician, but I knew that there was so much more for me to learn, and I wanted to be able to build up the content of the show and to make the show stronger. I had a show that material that I performed, but I knew I wanted to improve. I wanted a place where I could really focus a lot of my time and energy on the content of the show, on the magic, on the routining, on the structuring of the show. And I, had learned, particularly spending more time in Las Vegas during those summers, just how much of having a show also involves promoting that show. Sure. And, they always say the classic line is that, show business is the longer word.
That's right. It's 2/3 of show business.
That's right. And
you add up the letters.
Absolutely. And I knew that if I really launched a residency, that the promotion, the advertising, that as people will say, the getting the butts in seats, would take up a ton of time and energy. And I knew when I just graduated, that's right.
Just graduate, you don't have any money.
Right. So I had just graduated, and, I'm new to being a full-time magician. I had, again, performed all through school, but I wanted that time to be able to really improve the show, to really build up the show. And so I ended up, as I mentioned, getting a lot of no's, and I got my first yes was from the Wyndham Grand Desert Resort. And I remember flying out to Las Vegas during the spring break of my senior year of college to have a meeting with, at the time, the activities manager at this property, and pitching my idea for a show. And he said, you know what, we'll give it a try. We'll see how it goes. And so we started doing that. I knew when I moved out to Las Vegas, I had this one weekly show that I could count on, one night a week. And I could sort of build the rest of my schedule around that.
It was all about you. I mean, it was not a variety show. It was you. So you weren't part of another show.
Right.
That's cool.
So it was, And I think, the fact that they handled the promotion to their guests, it was mostly, promoted to the guests within their property. And the fact that they handled that, to me, was wonderful, because it meant that this show could be this place where it was almost like a laboratory. It was a place where I could be continually working on material. I could put in, one new bit this week, and then I could really, one new piece, let's say, or I could, tweak something and make these continual adjustments, these continual tweaks.
Right.
And it was a place that where I could really do that. These were smaller shows. It was kind of like if you imagine kind of like a meeting or a conference room converted into a theater space.
Okay.
So, we'd have like a big sort of television screen. We'd play my intro video, and I could hook up my little audio ape sound system and control the music myself. And those shows were a wonderful opportunity. And so after I was doing that weekly show for about a month, I had been in conversations with some other properties, but we hadn't yet finalized it and sealed the deal on it. And I was able to then go to these other properties and say, hey, we have a working model now at Wyndham. It's going great. It was, it was going really well, fortunately. And I said, would you now be willing to give it a chance? And that's how I ended up about a month later adding a second property, the Marriott's Grand Chateau.
Yeah.
And I did
now,
actually.
those are timeshare properties. Is that right?
They are, but we ended up doing, so these were shows that were for mostly advertised on their property to the guests who were already staying at their hotel.
All right.
And it ended up being a good fit for the show, because there were a lot of families, and the show that I do is an all ages show. It's not a show specifically for kids, but it's a show that's appropriate for kids and appropriate for all ages.
Family, sure.
That's right. So,
and you weren't doing illusions yet at that point, I guess.
Right.
You were doing more stand-up.
It was more stand-up parlor. It was stage, some of it was stage magic, but it wasn't the kind of big box
grand
illusions.
Illusion, right.
Exactly. And I ended up after that adding a third weekly show at Cancun Resort. So over time, ended up having these regular shows and worked the rest of my performing around that. So as I traveled for college shows and as I did corporate events, I knew that, okay, every Wednesday and Thursday I had these shows lined up, but I could travel on the weekends and on the other days of the week.
I say the college shows. Did you work like the college circuit then as well?
I did.
So you were going around to all the schools, and did you just drive in and set up and okay.
That's right.
I'd
drive in or I'd fly in. I went to NACA to the conferences, showcase there. Did the showcases, met the I'd be at the NACA booth with absolutely.
Well, you're closer to their age, certainly, I guess. But did you, at that point, you were kind of doing both, and you were going to have to eventually make a choice, I guess, of whether you're going to stay put, maybe there in Vegas, or continue to do the college circuit. So, what made you decide? You tired traveling? Or?
So, for about 4 years, I did those weekly shows, which I was able to concentrate mostly on Wednesdays and Thursdays, which kind of worked out well that they were in the middle of the week. So I could travel and do other shows and particularly, a lot of events that happen on weekends, I was able to travel and do those. So that worked out nicely. I did that for about 4 years. So I moved out to Las Vegas, when I graduated from college in 2014. For the next 4 years, did these, regular shows at the Las Vegas properties and then traveled and did, corporate events both in Vegas and traveling and, did these college shows and did private parties and then about 4 years out. So I moved out to Vegas in 2014 and in 2018 is when we opened the show at Westgate, which was such a dream. I was so excited to have the chance to do this Vegas residency, to, work with such a wonderful team. So that's how that happened. And when that opportunity came along, I was just so incredibly excited about that.
That's great. What do you do now as we start to kind of wrap up? What do you do now really to encourage young people to get involved in magic the way that you did? I mean, you were given a book and it just clicked with you, but it may not with others because sometimes they will be given something that they like, say whether it's going to be a magic or it might be, again, you get involved in soccer or Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts or something. And when you're young, you kind of go in different directions. But what do you do to try to encourage people to at least give magic a try?
Yeah, it's a great question because for me, magic has been this awesome, really meaningful part of my life. So, it's really exciting to see, for sure. It's really exciting to see young people and people in general, developing an interest in magic. And I think for me, the show is a big part of that. I really hope to, be a positive role model. And during the show, I think
definitely you are. You've got to have a lot of young ladies in particular who are coming up to you after in line and saying, I loved your show and
thank you.
What do you do to encourage young ladies girls to continue?
Yeah, well, first of all, I love, as we talked about earlier, the audience participation, and that absolutely includes the kids in the audience. Every show, I'll call a kid up on stage to participate in the magic, and I'll give them a USB wristband. So we have these wristbands with USB drive
that are
built in.
Bands.
The slap bands, exactly, the slap bracelets, which I've always loved, and they contain a USB drive with magic instructional videos on there. So it's me on video teaching them the secrets of how they can do 10 cool magic tricks with everyday objects we'll already have around the house.
Got mine right there.
Oh, you got yours right here. Look at that. I'm honored. I'm absolutely honored. If you ever wanted to learn the jumping rubber band tricks, guy.
Oh, I'm going to be going big time.
Yes. So, that is something that I give to a kid every night or afternoon.
Then do you tell
and after the show, well, it'll really depend on the situation because, I'll always I'll tell so many kids almost every day, there are kids coming up after the show saying either that they already are a magician or that they're interested in becoming one. I mean, that's a regular occurrence. Sure. And to me, again, that's so wonderful to see. And I'm able to, tell them I'm rooting for them, which I absolutely am. And that, hopefully I'll get to see their magic show someday.
Yeah.
And then we'll talk depending on, again, it's about that personal connection, whether it's with
if they
with
live
kids
out east, you could tell them about the Tannen's Magic Camp or whatever.
Absolutely, or about the Society of American Magicians or the International Brotherhood of Magicians, or about all the magic podcasts out there, like the Magic Word. Absolutely. I mean, especially now, there are so many resources, both online. I mean, there are, of course, books have always been near and dear to my heart. There are magic groups. There are, all kinds of ways, online magic shops. There's so many different ways. There's YouTube, so many ways to learn.
Even if you live
magic
in the middle of nowhere, you can get involved in magic if you have access to the internet.
That's right. Yeah, for sure. So I'll talk with kids all the time and it's great, at the meet and greet because we can really have those conversations depending on what they're interested in. I'll say, oh, what kind of magic do you think is the coolest? What's your favorite magic trick? And then we can take the conversation from there. So we can talk about what they're really interested in. So it's not a one size fits all kind of approach. I think, the best way to for me to be able to support them is to genuinely just be excited for them and to hopefully, share resources that will really be helpful depending on what they're interested in,
Right.
and to be rooting for them. Because again, when I was their age, I remember what that was like. I remember how many magicians were kind and supportive to me, and that made a real impact. I remember it to this day.
It does. You have to have supporters, not just in your family, but also those around you who are helping you to supporting your
Yes.
your efforts and your passion.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it was an unconventional approach to go to Yale, graduate, and decide to move to Vegas to be a magician full time.
Yeah.
It's, not the conventional path. And so I'm grateful. My parents were so,
Supportive.
My
That's
family, they always taught me growing up. They said, if you do something that you really love to do, then you'll succeed at it because you care so much about it, because you're going to work so hard to make it happen.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's something that I really took to heart, do something that I really love to do. And I'll be motivated to work really hard to make that work.
That almost answers my question as I was going to wrap up, because I always ask, what is your magic word? What is your phrase? What is your philosophy of life? And that kind of sounds like it. Was that, or what would you say?
I think that's great. Do what you love, for sure. Work hard at it. Be proactive, and really connect with people, that genuine human connection. So I guess that was like 4 or 5. But
Well, thanks for connecting with us today. This has been great.
Thank you
glad
so much for
man, I
having
can't
me.
believe this went so quickly.
It flew by. Absolutely flew by. But thank you for having
Getting
me.
a chance to chat. Well, thank you, Jen. I appreciate it. And so for the Magic Word Podcast, that was Jen Kramer. This is Scotty out. Thank you, Jen, very much for being my guest this week on the Magic Word Podcast. I'm sure all of you listeners can easily spot and detect the joy in her voice and just the sheer happiness that she exudes wherever she goes. She is just a lovely lady, and as mentioned earlier in this podcast, you celebrated your 500th performance on Friday night at the Westgate. One of the things also that was brought up that evening, I think it was fair since it's public knowledge then now, is that not only were you celebrating that on Friday night, but you were also celebrating your birthday the next day on Saturday, the 25th of June. So happy birthday, happy belated birthday then now. And for those who are interested, she's 30 years old. Yeah, she just turned 30 and has already accomplished all of this. What a lady. Wow. Congratulations, Jen, on all of your accomplishments. And you have gone far, and the world is your oyster. You have so much more to look forward to. So good luck, congratulations, and we will be seeing much more and hearing much more of you down the road, too, I'm sure. And thank you again for sharing with us your magic and your background so we can all get to know you just a little bit better. It was just a joy for me to spend time with you. I also want to thank all of you who are listening from week to week. Thanks for tuning in, and thanks also for those of you who have the financial means to help our podcast and keep it going from week to week. Those are the friends of the Magic Word, the ones who give us their financial donations or their pledges from month to month. You don't have to pledge each week. You can just pledge once a month, and just for the cost of a cup of coffee each month. Let's say it's a $35 cup of coffee. No, whatever. You can $5, $20, whatever would be great. And I appreciate any and all donations and pledges that can be made, again, that help defray our many costs that we have associated with bringing you these podcasts from week to week, not just from locally, but from around the world. And while we're here in Las Vegas, we have many more people we have spoken with already and some content that we want you to enjoy and we want to bring to you. So be sure to join us over the next few weeks. And as mentioned, we're going to be going to the IBM convention soon in Atlanta, and so we'll be doing some daily updates from there as well. Well, that kind of wraps up this week. We have more to give you, as I just mentioned, so please join us again next week. And so you know who's going to be coming from week to week, I suggest you sign up for our pod letter. And if you just go to themagicwordpodcast.com, I would suggest there you can sign up for the pod letter, and you can learn who's coming up from week to week and also suggestions from the archives. Oh, one last thing, by the way. While I've been here in Las Vegas during this last week, one of the things that was kind of fun is I had an opportunity to go and do a video project. It was actually a talk show called Aaron's Hour with Aaron Phillips, and had an opportunity to chat with him a little bit. So I was going to say it was going to be just mainly a chat about magic and my life, but it got so that he had asked if I would do a little magic, and so it's really more of a performance. So if you get a chance, you can go and check that out. I'm going to post a link to that in the blog. So if you go to the magicwordpodcast.com, there you will see for this week a link where you can watch that talk show. Aaron has been doing this for 16 years, and I'm only the second magician he's had in all that time, and he's won several awards around Las Vegas for this wonderful show that he puts on. So I highly recommend that if you go and please and check that out. So until next week, stay well, get booked, and remember these 4 things. Do what you love and work hard at it. Be proactive and connect with people. Great advice. This is Scotty out.